June 6, 1944. 6:47 a.m. The cramped control room of the USS Harder reeked of diesel fuel, sweat, and fear. Commander Samuel Dealey pressed his eye against the periscope, and what he saw through that narrow lens would haunt every submarine captain's nightmares. 3 Imperial Japanese Navy destroyers cutting through the moonlit Pacific, like wolves closing in for the kill, their sonar pinging with deadly precision as they hunted their prey. In the next few hours, Dealey would either become a legend or join the 14 American submarines already resting on the ocean floor, victims of these very same hunting tactics. What he chose to do next would rewrite every rule of submarine warfare ever written. But before we dive into what happened next, let me paint you a picture of just how desperate this situation truly was. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will blow your mind. Samuel Dealey wasn't your typical naval officer. At 37 years of age, this seasoned commander had already completed 5 grueling war patrols and personally overseen the destruction of 18 enemy vessels. Now, the Japanese High Command had dispatched 3 of their deadliest destroyers, the Minazuki, Hayanami, and Tanikaze, with explicit orders. Find that American submarine that's been wreaking havoc on our supply routes for the past 3 weeks and eliminate it permanently. Here's something that'll shock you. Before April of 1944, American submarines had a standing policy: avoid Japanese destroyers at all costs. Why? The mathematics of naval warfare were brutally simple and unforgiving. A destroyer could slice through the ocean at 35 knots. Meanwhile, a submerged submarine struggled to reach even 9 knots. Between December 1941 and March 1944, the scoreboard was devastatingly one-sided. Japanese destroyers had sent 14 American submarines to the bottom of the Pacific. American submarines? They hadn't managed to sink a single Japanese destroyer during active combat engagement. Not one. Commander Dealey shattered that equation on April 13th in a way that would become legendary throughout the Pacific Fleet. Picture this moment. The destroyer Ikazuchi charges toward Harder's position at maximum speed, engines screaming, intent on ramming or depth-charging the submarine into oblivion. Every single officer standing on Harder's bridge anticipated the standard protocol: dive deep, run silent, pray the depth charges miss. Instead, Commander Dealey issued an order that seemed absolutely insane. "Flank speed ahead, straight at that destroyer." You can imagine the stunned silence that must have followed. At 900 yards, close enough to see the destroyer's bow wave, Harder unleashed 4 torpedoes in a carefully calculated spread pattern. 2 of those fish found their mark, striking the Ikazuchi amidships. The destroyer exploded in a catastrophic fireball and disappeared beneath the waves within 5 minutes. Dealey's radio transmission back to headquarters became instantly famous across the entire submarine force. Expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. If you think that message was brilliant, wait until you hear what happened next, because the Japanese weren't laughing. Admiral Soemu Toyota, the commander-in-chief of the Japanese combined fleet, found absolutely nothing amusing about this development. Here's why. Between January and May of 1944, Japan had already hemorrhaged 23 destroyers. They were planning Operation Ago, an ambitious scheme to annihilate the American invasion fleet at the Philippines, and this operation demanded perfect coordination. Every destroyer lost to submarine attacks threw their entire strategy into chaos. By late May, Toyota had concentrated his mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi anchorage in what represented the largest gathering of Japanese naval power since the Battle of Midway. We're talking 4 battleships including the legendary Yamato, 9 aircraft carriers, 15 cruisers, and 28 destroyers, an armada that would make anyone's jaw drop. But here's the kicker. American codebreakers knew exactly where they were. Admiral Charles Lockwood dispatched Harder to patrol the waters surrounding Tawi-Tawi, with orders to attack any targets of opportunity. For 9 straight days, Harder operated like a ghost, completely undetected, silently stalking her prey. Then, at 3 a.m. on June 6th, a Japanese patrol aircraft spotted Harder's periscope wake 15 miles north of Tawi-Tawi. 3 destroyers responded immediately, converging on the submarine's last known position. Now, if you want to discover how Dealey's revolutionary aggressive tactics played out against 3 destroyers hunting him simultaneously, make sure you smash that like button right now. Seriously, it helps us share more of these forgotten stories about the submarines that fundamentally transformed naval warfare forever. And hit subscribe while you're at it. Let me take you back to Commander Dealey in that crucial moment. Through his periscope, Dealey studied the lead destroyer approaching his position. The Minazuki, 250 tons of steel bristling with 4 5-inch guns, was closing rapidly while executing aggressive zigzag maneuvers designed to evade torpedo strikes. Behind her, 2 additional destroyers spread out in a textbook search formation, effectively boxing Harder into what the Japanese intended to be a kill zone. What Dealey did next defied every conventional wisdom of submarine warfare. He swung Harder's bow directly toward the Minazuki. Range, 100 yards. Time until collision, 96 seconds. Every man crammed into Harder's conning tower understood exactly what "down the throat" meant in submarine parlance. You fire torpedoes straight at an attacking destroyer's bow, then dive beneath her keel before she reaches you. The stakes? If your torpedoes miss, that destroyer drops depth charges directly onto your exact position. If you miscalculate your dive timing by even seconds, the destroyer rams you at full speed and it's game over. To count 750 yards, Dealey gave the order. Fire 3 torpedoes. Take her down, 300 feet. Harder's bow dropped at a 30-degree angle, plunging toward the depths. 40 seconds after firing, 2 massive explosions shook Harder so violently that light fixtures shattered throughout the submarine. Then a 3rd explosion lifted Harder's stern 6 feet into the air before slamming it back down like a hammer. Dealey climbed back to periscope depth. Where the Minazuki had been just moments before, he now saw nothing but debris floating on an expanding oil slick. The destroyer had broken completely in half and was already sinking. The other 2 destroyers? They were racing away at full speed, dropping depth charges randomly in panic. Admiral Toyota received this devastating news at 9 a.m. His response was immediate and overwhelming. He ordered 6 additional destroyers to find and destroy that submarine. By noon, Japanese patrol planes were sweeping the area every 20 minutes. But Commander Dealey wasn't finished hunting. Not even close. June 7th, 2:30 a.m. Harder surfaced under cover of darkness to recharge her batteries. The night was absolutely pitch black. No moon, heavy cloud cover. Perfect hunting conditions for a submarine commander with nerves of steel. At 3:12 a.m. radar contact. Single ship bearing 095 degrees, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. The contact was moving at 28 knots. Definitely a destroyer. The destroyer Hayanami, weighing in at 1,700 tons, had been searching for American submarines since 1 a.m. Her captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had received orders to return to base at 3 a.m. He was exhausted, his crew was exhausted, and nobody, absolutely nobody, expected an American submarine to attack on the surface at night. That assumption would prove fatal. Dealey ordered flank speed. Harder's diesel engines roared to life, pushing the submarine to 21 knots. He was deliberately closing the range, employing a tactic that required ice-cold nerves. Get inside the destroyer's radar detection range before they identify you as a threat. At 4,000 yards, Hayanami's radar operator finally picked up a surface contact. Small vessel, moving fast. Probably another destroyer returning to base, he reasoned. At 3,000 yards, Commander Kuboki realized his catastrophic mistake. American submarine. He ordered flank speed and turned to ram. Too late. At 2,300 yards, Dealey unleashed 4 torpedoes. 2 struck Hayanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The explosion was so devastating it literally tore the destroyer's stern completely off her hull. The ship rolled 90 degrees, her propellers still spinning uselessly as she went under stern first. Commander Kuboki and 147 sailors perished as the ship plunged into the depths. Dealey immediately ordered a crash dive. Japanese patrol planes would arrive within minutes. 2 destroyers destroyed in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was now hunting him with absolutely everything they had. Admiral Toyota was beyond furious. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to the same submarine? Unacceptable. He pulled 8 destroyers from convoy escort duty and organized them into specialized hunter-killer groups with one singular mission: find and destroy that American submarine operating near Tawi-Tawi. Every destroyer captain received identical orders: maximum aggression, no retreat whatsoever, kill that submarine at any cost. On June 8th, Dealey took Harder south toward Sibutu Passage, the narrow strait between Tawi-Tawi and Borneo, where Japanese destroyers patrolled constantly. He wanted to see exactly how many he could sink before they figured out his tactics. At 2 p.m., the lookout spotted 2 destroyers steaming in formation. Tanakaze and an unidentified escort, both moving at 25 knots, conducting a standard search pattern. Dealey studied their movements meticulously for 90 minutes, analyzing every pattern, every course change. The destroyers were following a predictable zigzag maneuver, changing course every 8 minutes. That gave him maybe 30 seconds to set up a shot after each turn. A razor-thin window of opportunity. He positioned Harder directly in their projected path and waited with the patience of a predator. At 4:30 p.m., Tanakaze turned directly toward Harder's position. Range, 3,000 yards. Dealey let her close. 2,500 yards. 2,000. 1,500. At 200 yards, he fired 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The first torpedo missed cleanly. The second struck Tanakaze near the bridge. The third hit the forward magazine, and the explosion was so absolutely massive that Harder's crew heard it clearly even underwater, with all hatches sealed tight. Tanakaze's bow section separated from the main hull. Both pieces sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer immediately turned and charged Harder's position, dropping depth charges as she came. Dealey took Harder deep, 400 feet. The depth charges exploded overhead, shaking the submarine violently, but miraculously causing no serious damage. After 40 minutes of relentless pursuit, the destroyer finally gave up and withdrew. 3 destroyers in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was about to make a decision that would fundamentally alter the entire course of the Battle of the Philippine Sea. But first, Dealey had one more destroyer to sink. And this time, he was going to do it in broad daylight with 2 Japanese destroyers watching the entire engagement. June 9th, 5 a.m. Dealey brought Harder to periscope depth 12 miles southwest of Tawi-Tawi. What he saw through that periscope made every man in the conning tower literally hold their breath. Dead ahead, 4 Japanese destroyers steaming in line abreast formation, actively searching for submarines. Their sonar was pinging so loudly that Harder's sound operator could hear it clearly without even wearing headphones. Dealey had 8 torpedoes remaining. 4 destroyers meant he'd maybe get 2 shots before they overwhelmed his position. He studied their formation carefully through the periscope. The lead destroyer was zigzagging aggressively, too difficult to target, but the second destroyer was maintaining a steady course. That was his target. At 6:12 a.m., the second destroyer turned directly toward Harder's position. Range, 4,000 yards. Dealey waited 3,000, 2,500. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of each other. The ship exploded so violently that debris flew 300 feet into the air. She rolled over and sank in 90 seconds flat. The other 3 destroyers immediately converged on Harder's position like wolves on wounded prey. Dealey took her deep, 500 feet. Depth charges began exploding overhead. 23 in the first 10 minutes alone. The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Hull plates groaned ominously under the tremendous pressure. A pipe burst in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater across the deck. Harder's crew worked in absolute silence, repairing damage while depth charges continued to detonate all around them. After 2 hours of this hell, the destroyers finally withdrew. Dealey climbed to periscope depth. The destroyers were gone. 4 enemy warships sunk in 4 days. But Dealey wasn't thinking about his unprecedented success. He was thinking about his fuel situation. Harder had burned through 60% of her diesel reserves. She had maybe 3 more days of patrol time before she'd have to withdraw to Fremantle. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of the Japanese mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi, received reports of these attacks at 2 p.m. on June 9th. 4 destroyers lost to 1 submarine. Ozawa did the mathematics immediately. If an American submarine could penetrate his defensive screen this easily, the entire anchorage was dangerously vulnerable. He sent an urgent message to Admiral Toyota. "The mobile fleet needs to depart Tawi-Tawi immediately. The Americans know exactly where we are." Toyota agreed, but this created a massive problem. Operation Ago required the mobile fleet to intercept the American invasion force near the Marianas, but the operation wasn't scheduled to begin until June 15th. Moving 6 days early meant his carriers would arrive without proper reconnaissance. His destroyers would be scattered across multiple patrol zones. His supply lines wouldn't be properly established. But staying at Tawi-Tawi with an American submarine hunting his destroyers? That was suicide. On June 10th at 8 a.m., the Japanese mobile fleet departed Tawi-Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers, heading northeast toward the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted the movement orders within hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, adjusted his battle plans accordingly. That early departure gave American carriers an extra day to position themselves for what would become the Battle of the Philippine Sea, one of the most decisive naval engagements in history. Commander Dealey knew none of this strategic impact. On June 10th at 4:30 p.m., he spotted 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Sibutu Passage, both moving at high speed, conducting an aggressive search pattern. Dealey had 5 torpedoes remaining, enough for 1 more attack. At 5:15 p.m., he fired 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. 1 struck near the bow. The destroyer slowed significantly but didn't sink. The second destroyer immediately charged Harder's position. Dealey fired his last 2 torpedoes. Both missed cleanly. He now had no torpedoes left, no way to defend himself, and a Japanese destroyer bearing down on his position at 32 knots. Dealey ordered emergency deep. Harder's diving planes bit hard, pushing the submarine down at maximum angle. 300 feet, 400, 500. The destroyer passed directly overhead, her propellers churning the water so loudly that Harder's crew could hear the individual blades slicing through the hull itself. Then silence. The destroyer was circling back. Dealey knew this pattern intimately. The destroyer would make multiple passes, dropping depth charges on each run until either the submarine surfaced or imploded from the pressure. Harder had no torpedoes left to fight back, no way to damage the destroyer. His only option was to outlast the attack and hope the destroyer ran out of depth charges first. The first pattern dropped at 5:23 p.m. 6 depth charges exploded in a tight pattern around Harder. The submarine rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Light bulbs shattered. Men grabbed handholds desperately. A second pattern dropped 2 minutes later, closer this time. The explosions lifted Harder's stern and slammed it back down. Cork insulation rained from the overhead. A hydraulic line burst in the control room. For 90 agonizing minutes, the destroyer hunted Harder. 42 depth charges total. Most exploded too shallow or too far away, but 3 came close enough to crack gauge glass and spring minor leaks. Dealey kept Harder at 500 feet, moving at just 2 knots, making as little noise as humanly possible. Finally, at 7 p.m., the destroyer withdrew. She'd exhausted her entire depth charge supply. Dealey waited another hour before surfacing. The ocean was empty. No destroyers, no patrol planes, just darkness and the comforting sound of diesel engines recharging batteries. Harder limped south toward Fremantle at 8 knots, carefully preserving fuel. She arrived on June 26th after a 17-day patrol that would go down in history. The moment Harder tied up at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was waiting. He'd been tracking Dealey's patrol reports via radio intercepts throughout the entire mission. 5 destroyers attacked, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In just 12 days, the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine warfare history. Lockwood awarded Dealey the Navy Cross on the spot. Then he asked the question every submarine commander dreaded. "Can you do it again?" Dealey's answer was immediate and unwavering. "Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. Harder's crew spent July in Fremantle undergoing extensive repairs and resupply. Dealey personally trained new crew members on the down-the-throat attack tactics. By late July, every single submarine commander in the Pacific had studied Harder's patrol reports in meticulous detail. The tactic worked phenomenally. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of Dealey's aggressive approach. On August 5th, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th war patrol. She'd been assigned to operate as part of a 3-submarine wolf pack alongside USS Harder and USS Hake. Commander Dealey was placed in overall command. Their mission: patrol the waters west of Luzon and attack Japanese shipping heading to the Philippines. The patrol started exceptionally well. On August 21st, the Wolfpack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. In a brilliantly coordinated attack, they sank 4 cargo ships totaling 22,000 tons. On August 22nd, Harder and Hado attacked 3 coastal defense vessels off Bataan. All 3 sank. Harder was credited with destroying 2 frigates, Matsuwa and Hiburi. By August 23rd, Hado had expended all her torpedoes and withdrew from patrol. That left Harder and Huck operating together off Dasol Bay on the western coast of Luzon. Japanese intelligence had been tracking the Wolfpack's movements carefully. They knew approximately where the American submarines were operating, and they'd sent something special to deal with them. At 4:53 a.m. on August 24th, USS Huck submerged 4 miles off Hermana Island. Through her periscope, she could see Harder on the surface, 4,500 yards to the south. Both submarines were preparing to attack a damaged Japanese destroyer that Hado had torpedoed the previous day. Then Hake's sonar operator heard something that made his blood run ice cold. Echo ranging. Close. Getting closer. 2 Japanese escort ships were closing rapidly on Harder's position, CD-22 and minesweeper PB-102. Both were moving at 18 knots, conducting an active sonar search. They'd been hunting American submarines for 3 days straight. Japanese intelligence had intercepted radio transmissions between Harder, Hak, and Hado during the Palawan Bay attack. They knew the Wolfpack was operating somewhere off Dasol Bay. Hak's captain immediately ordered his submarine deep and silent. He watched through his periscope as the two Japanese ships closed on Harder's position. At 5:20 a.m., Hake's radio operator tried desperately to warn Harder. No response. Either Harder's radio was off, or she was already preparing to dive. At 5:30 a.m., Harder crash dived. The Japanese ships were less than 2,000 yards away. Dealey had seen them at the last possible moment. He took Harder down fast, ordering flank speed and maximum dive angle. The submarine descended at a 35-degree angle, her diesel engines still running as she submerged, leaving a massive bubble trail on the surface that pinpointed her exact location with devastating precision. CD-22's sonar operator had a perfect contact. Range, 1 to 200 yards. Depth, approximately 200 feet, still diving. The escort ship's captain ordered an immediate depth charge attack. At 5:47 a.m., CD-22 made her first pass over Harder's position and dropped a full pattern of depth charges set to detonate at 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The submarine's pressure hull cracked catastrophically near the after torpedo room. Seawater flooded in at tremendous pressure. Harder's stern flooded completely within 90 seconds. The submarine's bow rose sharply as the stern dragged her down toward the depths. Dealey ordered all ballast blown. Emergency surface. The compressed air system fought valiantly against the flooding, but there was simply too much water in the stern compartments. Harder couldn't reach the surface. At 5:52 a.m., CD-22 made a second depth charge run. This pattern hit even closer. The explosions ruptured Harder's main pressure hull in multiple locations. The control room flooded. All electrical power failed completely. Emergency lighting went dark. At 600 feet, well below her maximum operating depth, Harder's hull began to implode. Bulkheads collapsed under the crushing pressure. Compartments were crushed like tin cans. The submarine was gone in less than 3 minutes from the first depth charge impact. At 6 a.m., CD-22 and PB-102 reported a successful kill. Large quantities of oil, wood debris, and cork floated to the surface. The Japanese ships circled the area for 2 hours, dropping additional depth charges to ensure the submarine was completely destroyed. They recovered no survivors. All 79 men aboard Harder died that morning. Commander Samuel Dealey, radioman Calvin Bull, who'd earned a Bronze Star for the destroyer kills in June. Every officer and sailor who'd helped make Harder the most feared submarine in the Pacific. USS Hake remained submerged until nightfall. Her captain filed a contact report describing Harder's loss. The message reached Admiral Lockwood at 8 a.m. on August 25th. Lockwood immediately suspended all submarine operations in the Dassault Bay area and ordered every boat to withdraw to safer waters. The news reached the United States in early September. The Navy Department announced that USS Harder was presumed lost with all hands. No additional details were provided. Submarine operations remained classified. The American public wouldn't learn the full story of Harder's 5th patrol until after the war ended. But the Japanese knew. Admiral Toyota received the report on August 26th. The submarine that had terrorized his destroyer fleet for 3 months was finally gone. He ordered a commendation for CD-22's crew. What Toyota didn't know was how much damage Dealey had already accomplished, and how those 4 days in June had fundamentally changed everything. The Battle of the Philippine Sea began on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harder sank her 4th destroyer off Tawi-Tawi. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet engaged Admiral Spruance's 5th fleet in what would become the largest carrier battle in history. 15 American carriers faced 9 Japanese carriers, 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese aircraft. The battle lasted 2 days. American pilots shot down 376 Japanese aircraft while losing only 30 of their own. American pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers sank: Taiho, Shokaku, and Hio. 2 battleships were damaged. 1 cruiser sunk. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost 75% of its carrier air groups and would never recover from these losses. But here's the critical point that many historians miss. The battle might have gone dramatically differently if Admiral Ozawa had arrived on schedule. His original plan called for the mobile fleet to depart Tawi-Tawi on June 15th. That would have given his reconnaissance planes 4 full days to locate the American fleet before the battle began. His carriers would have been fully supplied, his destroyer screens properly organized, his battle plan perfectly coordinated with land-based aircraft from the Philippines. Instead, Harder forced him to leave 6 days early. Ozawa arrived in the Philippine Sea on June 14th, with his fleet scattered across 200 miles of ocean. His reconnaissance aircraft had burned through their fuel reserves during the premature departure and couldn't conduct proper searches. His destroyers were still regrouping from anti-submarine patrols around Tawi-Tawi. His supply ships were 3 days behind schedule. When American carrier aircraft found Ozawa's fleet on June 19th, his carriers were still in the process of launching aircraft. His combat air patrol was dangerously undermanned. His fleet formation was disorganized and vulnerable. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot happened because Ozawa wasn't ready to fight. And Ozawa wasn't ready because Commander Dealey had sunk 4 destroyers in 4 days and convinced the Japanese High Command that Tawi-Tawi was too dangerous to remain as a base. Admiral Lockwood understood this strategic impact immediately. In his post-war memoir, he wrote that Harder's 5th Patrol was the most strategically important submarine operation of the entire Pacific War. 4 destroyers sunk meant 4 fewer escorts protecting Japanese carriers during the battle. But forcing the mobile fleet to depart early meant the entire Japanese battle plan collapsed before the first shot was even fired. Let me put this in perspective for you. Between December 1941 and August 1944, American submarines sank 1,114 enemy ships, totaling 5.3 million tons. Japanese merchant vessels, cargo ships, tankers, troop transports, but only 29 warships. Most submarine captains avoided warships entirely. Too dangerous, too well-armed, too fast. Commander Dealey proved conclusively that submarines could hunt warships successfully. His down-the-throat tactic worked brilliantly because it violated every single assumption Japanese destroyer captains made about submarine behavior. Submarines weren't supposed to charge destroyers head-on. They were supposed to run, hide, evade. When Harder charged instead, Japanese captains hesitated. That moment of hesitation cost them approximately 12 seconds, and 12 seconds was exactly enough time for torpedoes to close the range and strike their targets. By war's end, American submarines using Dealey's revolutionary tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships, 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, 38 destroyers. The rest were submarines, escorts, and patrol craft. Japan started the war with 63 destroyers. They built 49 more during the conflict. American submarines sank 38 of them. Harder personally accounted for 4 in just 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented Commander Samuel Dealey's Medal of Honor to his widow, Edwina Dealey, in a ceremony on the White House lawn. The citation read in part, "This remarkable record of 5 vital Japanese destroyers sunk in 5 short-range torpedo attacks attests to the valiant fighting spirit of Commander Dealey and his indomitable command." The Navy named a destroyer escort after him, USS Dealey, commissioned in 1954. She served with distinction until 1972. Harder received the Presidential Unit Citation for her first 5 war patrols, 6 battle stars for World War II service. Her motto, "Hit 'em harder," became legendary throughout the submarine force. But her real legacy was the tactical revolution she ignited. Before Harder's 5th patrol, submarine doctrine emphasized stealth and evasion above all else. If a destroyer detected you, you ran. You went deep, rigged for silent running, and hoped desperately that the depth charges would miss. Engaging destroyers in direct combat was considered absolute suicide. The mathematics didn't support it. Destroyers were faster, better armed, and specifically designed to kill submarines. Dealey changed that calculus completely by understanding one critical fact about destroyer captains. They expected submarines to run. When a submarine charged instead, the destroyer captain had to make an instant decision with incomplete information. Turn left, turn right, maintain course, fire guns, all while torpedoes closed the range at 46 knots. Most captains chose wrong. By the time they realized their mistake, the torpedoes were already striking their hulls. Between June and December 1944, 12 American submarines adopted Dealey's aggressive tactics with remarkable success. USS Tang sank 2 destroyers. USS Trigger sank 1. USS Barb sank 1 destroyer and damaged another. USS Flasher sank 3 escort vessels using down-the-throat attacks. The tactic's success rate was an astounding 63%. For every 5 attacks, submarines sank 3 destroyers and damaged 1 more. Only 1 in 5 attacks failed. Completely. Japanese destroyer captains eventually adapted. By late 1944, they had developed effective counter-tactics. When a submarine charged, destroyers would turn away and circle back, forcing the submarine to expose her broadside to torpedo attacks from other destroyers in the formation. Or they'd deliberately slow down, letting the torpedoes pass ahead while closing for a ram. The tactic still worked, but the success rate dropped to 40%. American submarine losses increased significantly. Between August and December 1944, 9 submarines were lost to destroyer attacks. Tang sank on October 24th, when her own torpedo circled back and struck her. Harder went down on August 24th. Darter ran aground on October 23rd while pursuing a destroyer. But even with these higher losses, submarines were sinking more enemy ships than ever before. The aggressive tactics were devastatingly effective. Admiral Lockwood faced an agonizing choice: recall all submarines and return to purely defensive tactics, or accept higher losses in exchange for destroying Japan's convoy system completely. He chose aggression. Between January and August 1945, American submarines operating under aggressive patrol doctrines sank 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan had less than 25% of the merchant tonnage it started the war with. The home islands were literally starving. Factories were shut down for lack of raw materials. The Imperial Japanese Navy couldn't fuel its remaining ships. Commander Dealey never witnessed any of this ultimate victory. He died just 3 months after his greatest triumph, killed by the same type of escort ship he'd spent a year learning to destroy. But his tactics continued to shape submarine warfare. Every submarine commander in the Pacific studied Harder's patrol reports religiously. Every attack plan referenced the down-the-throat doctrine. Every torpedo solution included calculations for charging destroyers head-on. On May 22, 2024, 80 years after she sank, an underwater exploration team led by Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 project discovered Harder's wreck in the South China Sea. She sits upright on the seafloor at a depth of 3,650 feet, 12 miles west of Dassel Bay, where she made her final dive. Her pressure hull remains mostly intact, except for catastrophic depth charge damage near the conning tower. The wreck is designated a protected war grave. No salvage operations are permitted. But finding Harder meant something far more significant than simply locating a shipwreck. It meant bringing closure to families who'd waited 80 years for answers. And it meant honoring 79 men who fundamentally changed naval warfare forever. Today, Harder's story lives on in unexpected ways. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, submarine tactics instructors still teach the down-the-throat attack as a critical case study in aggressive warfare. Not because modern submarines use the identical tactic. Modern torpedoes are wire-guided and don't require close-range attacks, but because Dealey's approach demonstrates a fundamental principle that transcends technology. When your enemy expects you to run, charging often works far better than hiding. The Naval History and Heritage Command maintains Harder's complete patrol reports in their archives. Every radio message, every torpedo firing solution, every depth charge attack meticulously documented. Researchers studying submarine warfare in the Pacific can trace exactly how Dealey developed and refined his tactics across 6 war patrols. His reports reveal a commander who learned from every single encounter, constantly refined his approach, and never stopped searching for ways to sink more enemy ships. Commander Dealey's grave is located at Arlington National Cemetery in Section 59, Grave 874. His headstone lists his rank, his dates of service, and one simple line: Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. Families of Harder's crew visit every year on August 24th, the anniversary of her sinking. They place flowers. They share stories about grandfathers and great-uncles who died at 22 or 25 or 37, fighting a war most of them never expected to survive. The 79 men aboard Harder came from 38 different states: farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Michigan, college graduates from California. They volunteered for submarine duty, fully knowing the casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II died, the highest percentage of any branch of the American military. They knew the odds. They served anyway. Calvin Bull, the radio man who earned a Bronze Star for his crucial role in sinking 5 destroyers, was just 24 years old when he died. John Maurer, who survived Harder's sinking and later rose to the rank of admiral, spent 50 years telling their story. He died in 2010 at age 90. The last survivor of Harder's crew, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at age 98. With his passing, no one who actually served aboard Harder remains alive to tell their story firsthand. That's precisely why stories like this matter so profoundly. These men left behind patrol reports and radio messages and Medal of Honor citations. But those official documents can never fully convey what it actually felt like to charge a destroyer at flank speed, or hear depth charges exploding overhead with bone-shaking force, or watch your captain make split-second decisions that meant life or death for everyone aboard. The official history tells us that Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days. It doesn't tell us about the raw fear, the crushing exhaustion, or the absolute certainty that this patrol might very well be your last. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a personal favor right now. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube's algorithm to show this story to more people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about submarine commanders who changed naval warfare with revolutionary aggressive tactics. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world, and you're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here and that you care. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making absolutely certain that Commander Samuel Dealey and the 79 men of USS Harder don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen. Retry.